Ladder on the 57 North Bedford Wall Road, that's blocking the right lane.
Nearly 3,000 teen drivers die in car crashes each year. Tire Rack Street Survival is designed to save lives. The one-day hands-on driving school gives teens experience in car control through exercises that include emergency braking and skid recovery. Find a class near you at TireRack.com/survive.
Is this the tackle?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers get 7 shutout innings from Clayton Kershaw to beat the Angels in Anaheim. First shutout win for the Dodgers since June 10th in Philadelphia. LeBron's younger son, Bryce, is transferring from Sierra Canyon High School to Campbell Hall in Studio City. The 16-year-old Bryce will be a junior in the fall. He's 6'6" and already showing star potential. LeBron's oldest son, Bronny, will be a freshman at USC in the fall. Here's something from the downright delusional department. People close to Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant told an NBA writer that the NBA and the media are out to get Morant. Morant was given a 25-game suspension at the start of next season for conduct detrimental to the league, including flashing a handgun in 2 social media videos. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Was rolling in my car when I pulled up at the mall. Couldn't find a place to park. Threw my keys to the valet. Handle it for me. I was only there to hang, wasn't looking for a thing. I was just about to bounce, and then I saw Miss Lady. Then I said to myself, destiny only is one for me. There go my baby. Look at her.
If you've not seen Charlie Wilson on the NPR Tiny Desk, it's one of the best ones ever. Just Google it and check it out. When NPR, I was at NPR for years, as many of you know, hosting a show, the first African American in the history of NPR to have his own daily show. So I had a decent time at NPR for the 3 or 4 years I was there, making history. But it was during that time where they launched this notion of the Tiny Desk when I was at NPR. And I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, although I thought it was a creative and innovative idea to have artists come in, perform live in a stripped-down sort of manner. And that Tiny Desk idea was one of the best things NPR has ever done. And I've seen some great stuff on Tiny Desk. But if you have not seen Uncle Charlie and his Tiny Desk appearance on NPR, trust me, it's only 30 minutes. But you will rarely see anything better than what Charlie did on that Tiny Desk. So you should check it out. We're playing Charlie Wilson because June is Black Music Month, and every day during this month, we pick an artist and we play their music. All 3 hours of our program. We call it an artist in residence, although they're always an artist in absentia, really. Ain't none of them here, but their music is here. So There are artists in residence in abstention. And today, Charlie Wilson is our featured artist. And so all 3 hours of today's program, you hear some of the best of Charlie Wilson, Uncle Charlie, as we celebrate June being Black Music Month. In this hour, on June 29th, speaking of June, the California Reparations Task Force will finally hand over to the state legislature its extensive report and recommendations for compensation to eligible Black Californians for the harms of slavery. So, now what? That's the question, right? Now what? Couldn't have a better guest to answer that question than the lead organizer of the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. His name is Chris Lodson. Chris, welcome back to KBLA. How are you, my friend?
Tavis, I am great. It is a pleasure to be back with you.
It's an honor to have you back, and I'm glad we have an hour because there's a whole lot to
Yes,
get
sir.
to answer that question. Now what? So let me just start with the broad question. Now what? You take it wherever you want to go, and I'll follow you. Take it away, Chris.
Now what?
Yeah.
Now we get reparations done. You know, Tavis, I've been telling our team at CJ Coalition for a Just and Equitable California that, you know, we've already made history. You know, it was already history making to help enact the first ever state level reparations task force bill, and to do that work in 2019 and 2020 alongside and with the leadership of then, of course, Assembly Member Dr. Shirley Weber, now California Secretary of State. Dr. Shirley Weber, it was already history making doing that. But I tell our team what we have to do next is going to make what we've already done look easy, because next and now we have to get the reparations. And so what we have to do next is encourage, motivate, and push our state Senate, our state assembly, and our governor to actually enact a strong reparations bill in 2024. I am highly, I won't say 100% confident, but I'm 99.9% confident that we will have reparations legislation introduced in 2024. That is already publicly stated by 2 of the sitting task force members who are also state level representatives. That is Senator Stephen Bradford, who I'm sure you know very well, and also Assemblymember Reginald Jones Sawyer. So they have already publicly committed to introducing reparations legislation in 2024. Our job is to actually get it done.
Okay, so I'm glad we got the hour. There's a whole lot to unpack, as I said. As we say around here, we got a lot to talk about. So I want to come in a moment to how we successfully frame the arguments that have to be made to get this legislation passed. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the framing of this. My dear friend Connie Rice, a regular contributor to my program, Connie Rice always says in every conversation, Tavis, get your frame right. You got to get your frame right. And I don't think we yet have the frame right for how we get this passed. That's my own assessment. So we're going to talk about framing as we move through this hour. But before we do that, you mentioned our friends Stephen Bradford and Reggie, of course, both friends of this station, both regular guests on this station. Steve Bradford and I were together in the last 10 days. This station, as part of our Juneteenth coverage, as part of our Juneteenth activity, we joined with the Empowerment Congress here in Los Angeles for a one-day symposium, if you will, called State of the Freed. And the conversation that entire day focused on reparations and where we are in this moment as we celebrate Juneteenth 2023 on the issue of reparations. Had an all-star panel, a number of other speakers and breakout sessions, but Steve Bradford, State Senator Steve Bradford, was one of the persons on the panel. And he said to the audience that day, very candidly, that he was concerned about the effort ultimately to get this bill passed, whatever the bill is going to be ultimately, to get it passed. And here's why he was concerned. He said that he had just introduced, a couple of days prior to coming to this session, he'd introduced legislation in the state Senate to extend the life of the task force. And as you know, he could not get that passed. Now we ain't got to the point of talking about writing checks yet. He could not get his colleagues in the Senate to extend the life of the task force. And so based on his inability to get that done, he shared with the audience very candidly, this is going to be an uphill battle. Now, as black folk, we've been used to climbing up the rough side of the mountain, no question about that.
Right.
But he expressed his concern that if he couldn't get that passed just to extend the life of the task force, how much more difficult is it going to be, exponentially more difficult, to get something done? So let me just start with that. When you hear Steve Bradford say something like that, how do you hear it?
Well, I think it's not only that; it's the effort that we had last year to remove the slavery and involuntary servitude exception from our state constitution, which the state of California would not even allow on the ballot for voters. So, there are a number of different pieces of legislation that we think should be, no-brainers and obviously have difficulty passing. I think that Senator Bradford is rightly concerned. I think he's rightly focused on the legislative and political work that has to be done. I am confident, though, that with folks like Senator Bradford, folks like Member Sawyer, folks like others who are in the legislature who we know are supportive of reparations, for example, folks in the California Legislative Black Caucus who are largely, if not completely, supportive and behind reparations. I am, and also, of course, obviously with the support and the guidance of the Secretary, right? Secretary Weber, who we mentioned earlier, who I believe is going to be a powerful political influence, not just in the legislature, but also in the governor's office, which is another piece that we have to talk about too, right? Which is, if there's support in the, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like we also need support in the governor's office too.
So hold that thought. When we come forward, we'll come right to that. That's the other issue I wanted to get to anyway. So you are not just brilliant, but you're prophetic and prescient, because that's exactly where I want to go next. It's one thing to talk about what the legislature is going to be up against. And again, we've sort of unpacked that. We'll talk about it a bit more perhaps as we move through the hour. But I'm concerned about this governor. I've expressed public concern about it. My colleague Dominique DePrima on her program has expressed concern about this moonwalk, if you will, the Michael Jackson moonwalk that the governor is starting to do on this issue. And that concerns many of us. He signed off on this idea many, many months ago, but now he seems to be getting cold feet. So we'll talk about the governor. We'll talk about how he framed this. We are on the eve of the California Reparations Task Force turning over its report and recommendations to the state legislature. That happens just days from now on June 29th. And we're just trying to figure out what happens next, how we handicap the possibility, the potential of legislation actually getting passed and signed into law, that is, by the governor of this state. Our guest in this hour is Chris Lodson, who is the lead organizer for the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. More with Chris when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
To talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life and your choices with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age, but there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talents, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, buy a Flex stackable tool storage system for just $249. That's $50 in total savings. Plus, earn up to 2 times the bonus points per dollar when you buy select Flex tools. Shop in-store or online for deals you can't beat. Because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Valid 6/8 to 6/21. While supplies last. U.S. only. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 6/30. Subject to change.
If car designers can make cars look like anything, why are there so many boring cars? Why not a car that looks like an ancient sword? Or the future? The sky isn't even the limit at Nissan. Why be boring when you can make a katana blade slice through traffic? That's the Nissan Z. Or something from the future whizzing by. And that's the Aria. Nissan. Redesign for thrill. 2023 Aria has limited availability. See dealer for financing details.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Got all these hot cars and hot cribs. Ain't got nobody to share it with, baby. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Hey girl, how you doing? My name is Charlie. That's Nate Wilson. I was wondering if I could take you out, show you a good time, invite you to my house. Here is my number, girl, you can call me, and don't forget it, babe. The name is Charlie. With all of this fortune, what am I doing single? Sometimes I tell myself, man, get out and mingle. You don't have to be alone, you need someone to love. But being famous, sometimes it's hard to find.
More of the best of Charlie Wilson. All 3 hours of our program today on KBLA Talk 1580 as we celebrate June being Black Music Month. We continue our conversation now with our guest, our friend and brother, Chris Lodson, with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. We were talking before the break about how we frame this effort to achieve reparations in this state. The whole nation is watching. As I've often said, what happens in California politics either cast a long shadow or a long sunbeam across the nation. And it always cracks me up when I'm talking to guests on this program. We're flagshipped in L.A., of course, heard across the nation, and I'm always talking to national figures, as you know, on this program. And you hear the same stuff I hear at the same time I hear it. And that is the frequent references to reparations here in California and the fight for reparations, I should say, here in California. So everybody in the country is watching this, waiting to see what we do, and it will, once again, either cast a long shadow or a long sunbeam across the nation. That said, before I get to the broader conversation of how we frame this successfully, because there are going to be many hurdles to overcome on our way to getting this done. Let me start with where Chris left off, and that is with the governor. And so my read of this, and again, many of my other colleagues here at this station, you know, I'm only on 3 hours a day, which means there are other hours of the day where all kinds of hosts are having their say. They're opining as well. And I think it's fair to say that the majority of the hosts that I've heard on our station also feel, Chris, some of the same skepticism about the ways in which Gavin Newsom is moving right about now. I don't need to color it much more than that. Give me your take on the governor.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, you know, just to be honest, you know, folks from our team also, you know, have expressed some of the same sort of skepticism and some of the same, quite frankly, concern from some of the comments that the governor made really in the past, you know, 3 to 4 weeks or so around California reparations, specifically as it relates to direct cash compensation, which is being recommended by the State Reparations Task Force. And the governor made some comments to the effect of, well, you know, there should be more than cash, et cetera, et cetera. I take it like this. You know, I think ultimately when there is a strong and sensible bill that is before the governor's desk, I think the governor will ultimately sign it. I think our path to getting there is a path, as you mentioned, with multiple hurdles, multiple obstacles. Right now, I would like the governor to wait for the bill to be actually presented to him before he makes any statements or any decisions about it. Personally, also, I think it's going to be important that as we do our work in the legislature, that we are in communication with the governor's office, that we are in coordination with the governor's office, but also, quite frankly, that we have such strong support in the legislature, such strong support in the people, which is just as important as anything else, that ultimately the governor will recognize what a transformational opportunity is before him. a historic opportunity before him and do the right thing.
Yep. I don't want to engage in any sort of armchair pop psychology of this governor. But I do want to spend a few more minutes here, Chris, with you, sort of dissecting the way he has moved heretofore, and whether or not that gives us any indication of the way he will move in the future. To your point, you hope he will sign it, and you hope he'll keep his mouth shut. You didn't say it that way, but keep his mouth shut until there's something on his desk. But let me just take a moment to give you my read of Gavin Newsom, and then you tell what you think.
Yeah.
So whether one agrees or disagrees with gay marriage, Gavin Newsom was ahead of the curve on that in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Some would argue that he took a political risk advancing that notion. Others would say, well, it is San Francisco. It wasn't much of a risk in San Francisco. But Gavin Newsom was taken to task and roundly criticized, as you recall, all across the nation for his advancing of that right in the city of San Francisco. So my point is, he has shown that he can move boldly, in air quotes. He can move boldly on legislation, on ideas that seem unpopular to the rest of the nation. Now, obviously, years later, gay marriage is written into the law in this country. And so he was, out front on that particular issue. But that's gay marriage.
Right.
Now we talking about Negroes. We talking about black folk now. And that's a very different equation. It's a very different equation. We talking about black folk. Racism, I repeat all the time on this program, to my mind, is the most intractable issue in this country.
Right.
And politicians will do A, B, and C, but they won't do D if D is black folk.
Is us, yes.
Exactly. If it's us, it changes the equation completely.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to over-talk this. You see where I'm going here. You see the frame that I'm trying to create here. I just don't know that a guy of Gavin Newsom's age, with Gavin Newsom's presidential aspirations, wants this to be hung around his neck like a noose. I mean, that's a bad phrase, talking about reparations and black people. But he wants to run for president, and everybody knows it's the worst kept secret in the nation. And I can't imagine Gavin Newsom, as I know him, not already doing the political calculus on the hell he's going to catch when he runs for president and he signed into law a reparations bill that gave Negroes a bunch of checks. I can't see him not factoring that into his future. Having said that, on the other hand, which is why I raised the gay marriage issue, Gavin Newsom is not afraid to take certain risks in certain situations. I just ain't seen him do it with black folk. I'll shut up. The microphone is yours.
Yeah, I love that framing, to be quite honest, because I think it's absolutely right. So there's two things. First, just straight up, I think we're going to find out what kind of leader Gavin Newsom really is throughout this process, specifically as it relates to black folks who descend from persons who were enslaved in the United States. We're really going to find out what he's made of as it relates to our people. Is he really for this particular group of people or not so much? I think we're going to find that out through this process for sure. But I think the framing that you added to it is spot on. And that is, yes, there's political calculus around the risks, but there are political calculus and calculations around the historic returns and historic benefits to this. Gavin Newsom has an opportunity here, as I mentioned earlier, to be someone who makes a historic and transformational change in this country, starting here in California. That only bodes well. That only makes it more successful and more likely that he will be someone who could be president. And so if he, I think, really wants to be president, I think this is something that he should seriously consider and ultimately do. The ball will be in his court partially, but as I said, too, it's also in our court. It's also in the people's court. It's also in the community's court. And it's also, obviously, of course, in the legislature's court, too. And I think ultimately, as I mentioned, he will do the right thing, but it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be without pressure and push from us.
So what I didn't say, and you made me think about it as you were talking, in terms of the political calculus, it does work the other way, as you intimated, which is that if you want to run for president and you have any understanding of how important black votes are to the base of the Democratic Party, what you don't want is to have black folk mad at you when you run for president. And you can't count on their vote because when you had the opportunity to do right by them, you punted.
Exactly.
Or put another way, you punked out. So
Exactly.
that calculus works as well. I think now of all kinds of people, the one that comes to mind immediately is Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar might well be vice president right now.
Yes.
Because that's who Joe Biden wanted. Let's be clear about it. This ain't no secret. He wanted Amy Klobuchar above Kamala Harris. But Klobuchar didn't get the nod because black folk in Minnesota raised all kind of hell about how bad she had been as attorney general in that state when it came to cases involving black people. And the black folk in Minnesota, they told them black folk in Minnesota told all the rest of us black folk, let us tell y'all about Amy Klobuchar, who she really is. And as you recall, her chances of getting the nod to be the vice president just dissipated by the day.
Absolutely.
And she eventually pulled her name out of the hat because she knew she wasn't going to get it. But that happened primarily because black folk in Minnesota, again, told all the rest of us who she really was and made it clear you do not want her as your vice president. So Gavin Newsom has to do that calculus as well. If he's going to run for president and you want black votes, and black folk, remember, when you had an opportunity to get their backs, you didn't do that. How do you convince them to vote for you? I think that's what you were teeing up. Does that make sense to you?
That makes 100% sense, and I love that example because you are absolutely right. That was, that was such a big deal for Amy Klobuchar, where black folks, and I remember hearing about it here in California and saying, "Oh no, this is not somebody who I can support for vice president or president," because she was actually running, for president at one time too.
Sure.
So, Governor Newsom, I think, should look to that as an example of what could potentially happen if he does not take what is really a historic, again, transformational opportunity to actually do the right thing and enact reparations for the descendants of those who were enslaved in the United States. Now, let me say this too. In California and other states too, even if the governor does not support something, there are ways to make it happen too. Right? So the path to reparations is not only there's not only one path to reparations. There are multiple paths to reparations legislation. One of those goes through the governor, but not all of them do. So I think that's something that the governor should take into account also. And that's what I was also getting at, where it's also about how much the people want it, and it's also about how much the legislature wants it.
So when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports, I want to talk about what those other paths are. So I'm sure people are curious what you mean by that. So whatever those paths are that do not run through the governor's office, we're going to get Chris Lotson to explain that when we come forward, number one. Number two, we'll get Chris also to explain who's in and who's out, whatever it may be done in terms of cash payments, who's in and who's out. What is that definition? I think that issue, it's been resolved now. We'll get Chris to explain, again, who gets a check and who doesn't. And then largely, we'll spend the rest of our time talking about, again, the framing, because I'm concerned that all the talk about money is going to cause all kind of drama in the coming months as we try to get this thing passed. So we'll talk about how we properly frame a conversation about racial justice, about racial equity, about reparative justice, when people want to focus just on the money. And that's why you see Gavin Newsom is going to do the moonwalk. He don't want to deal with the money piece of it. So we'll talk about it when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports with our guest, Chris Lotson of the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, who you're listening to right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Congress is hearing testimony from the former special counsel who released a report criticizing the FBI's investigation into alleged ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan said John Durham's probe found the Justice Department should have never opened the investigation. In Michigan, a trial is beginning for a woman charged in connection to a 7-year-old bringing a gun into a Grand Rapids public school. Last month, a student brought a gun that belongs to his mom's fiance, Chelsea Berkeley, to Cesar Chavez Elementary. The boy's mother, African-American Aubrey Wilson, is facing 4th-degree child abuse, and Berkeley is facing a felony firearm charge, which carries a 5-year sentence if convicted. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Nearly 3,000 teen drivers die in car crashes each year. Tire Rack Street Survival is designed to save lives. The one-day hands-on driving school gives teens experience in car control through exercises that include emergency braking and skid recovery. Find a class near you at TireRack.com/survive.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers get 7 shutout innings from Clayton Kershaw to beat the Angels in Anaheim. First shutout win for the Dodgers since June 10th in Philadelphia. LeBron's younger son, Bryce, is transferring from Sierra Canyon High School to Campbell Hall in Studio City. The 16-year-old Bryce will be a junior in the fall. He's 6'6" and already showing star potential. LeBron's oldest son, Bronny, will be a freshman at USC in the fall. Here's something from the downright delusional department. People close to Memphis Grizzlies star John Morant told an NBA writer that the NBA and the media are out to get Morant. Morant was given a 25-game suspension at the start of next season for conduct detrimental to the league, including flashing a handgun in 2 social media videos. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
Are you a small or micro business owner looking for ways to succeed after the pandemic? LA County has got you covered. Gain access to economic opportunity grants and technical assistance to help your business thrive. Whether you need mentorship or capital investment programs, they're here to help. Find out if you qualify at recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. That's recovery.lacounty.gov/programs. LA County and you, moving forward together.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
I switched to Boost Mobile and got a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone. Want to know the best part?
It was free?
Nope.
The fact that it's on America's largest 5G networks?
Nope. It's the ding.
Oh yeah, love the ding.
Right? It's all about the ding. It's the dingarooski, the dingaroner, the ring-a-ding-ding.
Unleash your power to save with Boost. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone when you switch. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power.
And the ding.
Limited time offer. New customers only. Available on select networks. 5G not available everywhere. One device per line. Tax excluded. Additional restrictions apply. See your local Boost Mobile store for details.
Hey, LA. I'm Pastor Xavier Thompson inviting you to join us for a special night of compassion and community rally for Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas at the Southern Missionary Baptist Church, 4678 West Adams Boulevard in the city of Los Angeles, Friday, June the 23rd, 7 p.m. This will be a time for the community to undergird Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas and his family as we approach the upcoming court hearing, which will determine whether or not he gets a new trial. We are urging all constituents, supporters, partners, friends, and well-wishers, those who seek justice for this courageous champion of our community, to join us. Friday, June the 23rd, 7 o'clock p.m., the Southern Missionary Baptist Church, 4678 West Adams Boulevard. Let's encourage Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas with our presence, participation, and our prayers. See you there.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
that could love you right in a special way. Ooh, like my fire, I feel alive with it, baby. You blow my mind. I'm satisfied. So what's the
Some of the best of Charlie Wilson on KBLA Talk 1580 as we celebrate June as Black Music Month. And Charlie Wilson is our featured artist of the day. You know, certain songs remind you of certain places and certain people. I went to school with a girl named Tamika, and whenever this song would come on, Tamika would just lose her mind. This is her favorite Charlie Wilson track, and all these years later, I've been out of school many years now. We'll leave it at that. And I still think of Tamika every time I hear this song. This is Tamika's track. And so that's just funny. But that's true for all of us. You hear certain songs, reminds you of certain places and people and things. And all right, Tamika, wherever you are, I hope your life is proceeding nicely. That said, we continue our conversation now with Chris Lotson, who's the lead organizer for the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, as we talk about what happens on June 29th. In case you've just tuned in, the California Reparations Task Force on June 29th will hand over to the California legislature its extensive report and recommendations for potential compensation to eligible black people of California for the harms of slavery. And so given that we are just days away from this momentous occasion here in California, that the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California have been so central in advancing. And I want to thank them and all the other persons who have really been at the forefront of this issue. It's not lost on me that, because I've been at this for 30 plus years as a broadcaster on TV and radio. And so 30 years ago, you mentioned reparations, you get laughed out of the room. And here we are in 2023 on the verge of what could be, as Chris said earlier, a historic opportunity for the governor of this state to sign into law, for the people of this state to celebrate California being such a huge state and people watching us again all the time. It's an opportunity for us to do something historic. But again, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have been laughed out of the room raising the issue of reparations. So it's hard to believe in many respects how far we've come on this particular issue, which leads me to ask a few other questions of our guest, Chris Lotson. Chris, let me start with this. Who's in and who's out? That debate went on forever about who actually qualifies for whatever we're going to get. So who's in and who's out?
Yeah, it did go on forever.
Yeah.
And in March of 2022, after, almost a year or so of public comment, public testimony, witness testimony, expert testimony, public input and participation, the State Reparations Task Force here in California decided partially that those who would be eligible for reparations are those African Americans who are descendants of enslaved or free black persons who were living in the United States before the year 1900. And then later on, really in the last, I would say 6 months or so, they added a residency piece, meaning that you also have to have at least lived in California for at least 6 months between the years of 1850 and 2020. So you have to have two pieces. We sort of tell folks when we're out in community meetings and community town halls talking about reparations, which we do regularly. We've hosted some 20 different California reparations events here in the state of California already this year alone, 20 last year also. And we tell folks your first foot in the door is that you have at least lived in California for 6 months, anytime between the years of 1850 and 2020. That's most of us, probably all of us, right? Secondly, your second foot in the door is that you are an African American who is a descendant of someone who was enslaved or free and living in the United States before the year 1900. So that's your second foot in the door. You close the door behind you, and then how much you're eligible for potentially will depend on how long you've lived in the state of California. So not everyone will be eligible for everything. So that's who's in.
Yeah.
Who's out are those who are not descendants of those who were enslaved or free and living in the United States before the year 1900. So this is mostly our brothers and sisters who are voluntary immigrants to the United States or the descendants of those who are voluntary immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good news is that I'm in. That's the first good news.
Same here. And 80 to 90% of anybody who self-identifies as black or African American is eligible, will be eligible for reparations in California. That's 2 million plus of the 2.5 or 6 million of us here.
Yeah, which leads me to another question, which I'll just tee up but pause for the moment, and that is how, with that many people, you can afford to cut checks, whatever that check will be for. We'll come back to that in a moment. But the other issue that you raised before news, traffic, and sports that I don't want to get too far afield from are these other paths to getting this on the books if we end up in a situation where the governor refuses to sign something that's been passed by the legislature. So tell you about these other paths.
Yeah, I'll mention one just for folks in the audience to keep in mind and start to think about. So, but let me say this first. I want the governor to be a part of this. I want the governor and his team to recognize, again, the transformational opportunity that they have before them. And ultimately, I think they will. And ultimately, I think he will. But, if for some reason the governor got a bill on his desk and we successfully made it out of the state Senate and the state assembly, and the bill gets to the governor's desk and the governor doesn't like the bill and doesn't want to sign it and doesn't want to engage in any negotiations to bring us closer to something that he can sign, if he decides to veto the bill, vetoes are overridable. Here in the state of California, nationally also, with 2/3 of both houses in the state legislature, you could and we could override any veto. Now, I don't expect us to get to that place, but to be quite honest, that is something that we have to have on the table, because from our perspective at the coalition, we will get reparations done one way or another. And to us, we have a saying, it's not over until we win.
There you go. I'm with you on that one. I would have to believe that as smart as Gavin Newsom is, his team will be working, I assume, with the legislature to make sure that he does get something that he can sign. It'd be horrible politics. I mean, that's politics 101, right? A neophyte in a situation like this would know that you don't let something to your desk that you have to veto. You don't want to be that guy. That guy that vetoed something. So I assume and hope that his team and the governor's office will be working with the legislature to make sure that whatever is crafted is something that he can, in fact, affix his signature to. I digress on that point. All right, now, for the rest of our time, I want to talk about the framing. As I said earlier, quoting my friend Connie Rice, you got to get your framing right. Let me just be direct and forthright with you. It troubles me that the conversation in the mainstream media, and this may be intentional for all I know, but everybody focuses. Yeah, I hear you laughing already, right? The focus is always on the money, and as long as the focus is on the money, that limits, I think, where this conversation can go. I yield to you, Chris Lotson.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is very interesting. So I want to first say that, and I think most folks know, but hopefully if you don't know, now you will know, that the State Reparations Task Force is recommending direct financial compensation to those who are eligible for reparations. And in their final report, which, by the way, the draft of which is up and available now on the website of the California Reparations Task Force, there are some really important, I would say, ways that the State Reparations Task Force and the economists that work for the State Reparations Task Force came up with how much folks could be potentially eligible for. So how do you even figure out how much someone would be eligible for? And the State Reparations Task Force final report goes through that in detail. And I think it's some of the most important economic work done on what our people are owed. It's smart, it's sensible, it's something that I've never seen done, quite honestly. So that is in the final report, and that is a recommendation of the state task force. It's one of many recommendations, of course, and quite honestly, I think it is, to be honest, the most important of the recommendations, and this is why. So all of the things that our people have experienced, from slavery, which, as some of the task force members call the scene of the crime, and then all the things that came after slavery, the racial terror, the political disenfranchisement, the harms to our people in housing and education and in healthcare, and the theft of our cultural and intellectual property, and the environmental harm and racism and the wealth gap, et cetera. All of those things have materially manifested themselves primarily in our wealth position as a people. And so what the task force is recommending is that we target our wealth position directly with direct financial, monetary, economic compensation. That is, to me, one of, if not the most important recommendations that the task force has made and will be recommending to the state and, of course, to the governor. It is, again, one of many recommendations, and it is something that I think the state itself will seriously consider, but it is something that cannot be, I think, overlooked, cannot be excluded from what we ultimately get.
So I hear your point loud and clear, and what I want to press on is how we frame that reality. I hear everything you said. It makes perfect sense to me, but optics are everything, as you well know. You engage politics and politicians every day, so optics are everything. So how do we frame that issue successfully? That's what I want to ask Chris Lotson about when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
I'm James Alexander of the Barcades and a proud member of AARP. I play bass for the Isaac Hayes movement, including the legendary Chef theme. Isaac Hayes was the first African American to win an Oscar for Best Song in 1973. That was only the fourth Oscar ever awarded to anybody black.
AARP members are history makers, past and present. In celebration of the 75th anniversary of Black Radio, this feature is proudly powered by AARP.
What would you call a joy that is as solemn as it is sweet and knows no bounds? A joy that's beautifully rooted in soul and resilience. This is Black joy, a joy that reflects pride and honor despite every challenge. AARP believes the power of Black joy is limitless, and we celebrate this joy supreme. Join us in celebrating Black joy at aarp.org/Black community.
King C. Gillette is the modern man's answer to their facial hair. With a complete set of precision tools, the King C. Gillette line offers the perfect fit for your facial hairstyle. Want to try something great? Try the Style Master, the quintessential styling tool that every man needs to craft their style. It's a waterproof, cordless trimmer with a long-lasting 4-directional blade. It's extremely versatile and designed to edge, trim, and stubble in 4 directions on any hair length. Master your style with King C. Gillette.
Wireless headphones. That'll be $200.
I'll use my Capital One Quicksilver card.
Now that's a hit. You used the Capital One Quicksilver card, which makes you the hero of every purchase. With Quicksilver, you earn unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere.
I wanted running music, but unlimited 1.5% cash back is pretty heroic.
Good instincts. Every hero needs a theme song. The Capital One Quicksilver card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Like bones, your teeth lose density and become weaker over time, which can lead to tooth decay. And that can make your visit to the dentist feel like this. But if you want your dental visit to feel like this, try Crest Densify. Crest Densify actively rebuilds tooth density to extend the life of teeth by remineralizing enamel. Densify from Crest, the #1 toothpaste brand in America. Smile, Crest has you covered.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
We had UCLA's Dr. Tyrone Howard as a guest on our program yesterday. He is the host of a brand new program premiering this Saturday at 10 a.m. called You Must Learn. We're honored to have Dr. Howard join our lineup. By the way, in the next hour, we will share with you, introduce you to 2 other new hosts who are joining our lineup this week on KBLA Talk 1580. But I come to Dr. Howard, Chris Lotson, because he was making the point yesterday that he is very hopeful, as am I, that however we define reparative justice in this legislation that we will send to the governor's desk for signage at some point, I'm hopeful that there will be some educational component to it. Because education, for so many of us, is now and always has been the great equalizer. But I hear your point that there are any number of ways to define what that reparative justice looks like. My question, though, and my concern is whether or not all the rest of that stuff, no matter how important and legitimate it might be, gets overshadowed by the talk about the money. And if that becomes the central theme, do we think we can get the votes we need to get it passed?
Ultimately, I think so, to be honest with you. And I think that the State Reparations Task Force actually had the framing correct. So the State Reparations Task Force is required by law to create a reparations plan that has 5 pieces to it. So compensation is the first piece, right? That's the direct monetary financial. Restitution is the second piece. That's the return of land, the return of property. Rehabilitation, that's free education, free medical service, free legal services, et cetera, et cetera. What we call guarantees of non-repetition. So changes to our government, changes to our system, changes to our laws to make sure that what happened to us never happens again. And then finally, what we call satisfaction. So these are what you might think of as the more symbolic forms of reparations, things like changing our textbooks to make sure that the actual history of what actually happened is actually told correctly and truthfully, taking down, racist monuments in the public and putting up what we want in their place. So that's 5 different pieces: compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, guarantees of non-repetition, and satisfaction. Those are the 5 pieces that the State Reparations Task Force is going to recommend as a part of a package of reparations recommendations. And as we were just talking about, the financial piece is the most important to me, but also it's the most focused on so far. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, some of that is intentional too, right? But I think the way that we frame this is very, very important. And this is why I'm really glad that you're bringing this framing piece up too. So I think it's about, one, making the case that reparations and compensation specifically is not something that is unusual for the United States. Think about our Japanese brothers and sisters. They receive compensation, right? Think about our Jewish brothers and sisters, although not from the United States government, they receive reparations in the form of compensation as well. So reparations as a form of compensation is very, very common, not just here in the United States, but also across the world too. I don't know of any other reparations program anywhere, to be honest with you, that did not have a direct compensation piece to it. And if you think about our people who worked for 256 years for no wages and no pay at all, and then were obviously subjected to a lot of really, really bad things after that, the direct compensation has to be a part of it. But also to the framing, it's not that it's very common for there to be direct compensation. It's also one piece of a larger package. And this is why we're really going to need folks like yourself and others to really be talking about the big package of what we call reparations, of course, inclusive of reparations as direct compensation. One thing we can't do is leave out the direct compensation, which is what I'm sort of hearing folks try to do now with, well, let's do everything but the direct compensation. No, if it doesn't have compensation, it's not reparation.
Nope, your examples are spot on, and yet you and I both know that politicians get real spineless and milquetoast when it comes to justice for black folk. I digress. Our remaining moments with Chris Lotz, and when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
What's up, LA? Reparations United and Black Pact got something real special going down in historic Leimert Park. Join us on July 1st, 2023. This event is sponsored by Reparations United and the Black Pact. We are fighting for justice and empowering our community. Together, we're making moves. We got an insane lineup for y'all. Soulful Regina Bell, King of LA, The Game, Smooth Eric Benet, and none other than the one and only Rotimi, and the powerful Sounds of Blackness. We also got some special guests in the house too, y'all. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, State Senator Stephen Bradford, and more. They bringing a passion and leadership to the stage. Mark your calendars, fam. July 1st, 2023. Leimert Park. Let's come together, support each other, and make a difference. Peace, love, and reparations benefit concert and unity rally. Be there or be left out. Produced for you by Tara Perry of Black Pact and Cam Howard of Reparations United.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The rent is too damn high. KBLA joins you in calling for affordable housing. The LA Tenants Union is a diverse, tenant-led movement fighting for the human right to housing for all. The LA Tenants Union demands safe, affordable housing and union rent control. They organize against landlord harassment, mass evictions, and displacement, and mobilize for the repeal of the Ellis Act and Costa-Hawkins Act. The LA Tenants Union is on a mission to strengthen tenants' political power through education, advocacy, advocacy, and direct action. To get help with your eviction or other landlord-tenant issues, take action for justice, or become a member, visit latenantsunion.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
So, Chris, I've enjoyed this hour immensely, and you've empowered us with a lot of information that we need to know as we are on the eve again of the California Reparations Task Force on June 29th, handing over their reporting recommendations to the California legislature for action that will ultimately and hopefully lead to the signage, the passage of this bill by the governor. Let me close with this in the 2 minutes I have left. At this point, what is the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California asking everyday black folk, maybe not even just black folk, those who believe in justice and fairness, fundamental fairness, what is it that you are asking everyday people to do at this point, at this moment?
Right. So great question. And thank you so much for asking that. I think right now we're asking folks to make sure that they are either in attendance personally, in person, or virtually at the upcoming California Reparations Task Force public hearing, which is, again, on June 29th. That's next Thursday, June 29th from 9 a.m. to about 11:35 or noon p.m. that day. It's in Sacramento at the Secretary of State Office, 1500 11th Street, 95814. First floor auditorium. Be there in person. It's free. It's open to the public. If you can't be there in person, make sure you are watching it virtually. It's live streamed on YouTube and on our website too, cjec-official.org. So the first thing we're asking folks to do is make sure that they're there at the final task force hearing. Second thing we're asking folks to do is make a personal commitment today to stay informed with current and accurate California reparations information. There is a lot of both misinformation and disinformation about California reparations out there, and there's more to come. So make a personal commitment to stay informed with current and accurate California reparations information. You can do that by, of course, following your show, Tavis, right here, where you put out a lot of great information on California reparations, but also by going to our website, cjec-official.org, and signing up for our free monthly California reparations newsletter. We also have free California reparations text messages that we put out also. So make a personal commitment today to stay informed about California reparations. Next and lastly, we are also asking folks to first know who your state senator and know who your state assembly person is. These are going to be the people who are going to vote on California reparations in 2024. We have something that we call the reparations equation. It's 41 plus 21 plus 1. Mm-hmm. Next year, we want reparations in California. That means we want 41 assembly members, 21 senators, and 1 governor to say yes. Mm-hmm. So make a commitment today also to know who your state senator is, to know who your state assembly person is, and then stay tuned because we are going to have a lot of work for folks to do to move those senators and move those assembly members to 41, 21, and 1.
I can assure you that you'll hear the voice of Chris Lotson on this program, and I suspect others on this station as this process moves forward. For now, we thank him and his team for all the great work they're doing at the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. Chris, I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you for your time, sir.
My brother, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you. The final hour of Tavis Smiley when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 15.
The latest from the Black Information